Hi there, and welcome to the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, where the content is free. It is episode 272 of your weekly Gersnet podcast. I'm your host tonight. I'm Colin Armstrong. As I tell you every week, guys, easy for me to say, it's not just the pod that we do here at Rangers. If you get yourself onto the website, you'll find the forums there, articles. Frankie's obviously got his social media. There's a history archive on the website as well, so get yourself on there as well. We would actually promote the pod, also put the word out there in social media. I think we've got over 6,000 subscribers now to the YouTube channel. So yeah, let everyone know that we're here and what we're doing. Before I bring in my guests, I have to mention our partners at Forrest Precision Engineering, who are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company. They have been a commercial supporter of Rangers Football Club for many years, and we're delighted that they're back in the pod. If you want more information on them, visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. You can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge, which is a stunning hospitality area within the main stand. For information on how to book this unique and intimate space, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. So I'll bring in my guests for the final time. It's my last night with Gersnet, actually. So yeah, we'll host it anyway. I'll be back now and again in a sort of guest capacity, but my hosting time is done. No more. I'm finished. I'm out. So I'll bring in my final guest. So it's John McCallum. John, you celebrating?
Listen, it's the high point of the season. Let's be honest. It's as good as it's been all year. The news we've all been waiting for, the news we've all been hoping for. Not that Angelo Postecoglou, I still can't say his name, is heading south. It's that you're heading south, north or east. So yeah, a big night, emotional night tonight for us, Colin. I'll try my best to make it through the pod without tears.
I know you're not that emotional, John. I don't expect tears, to be honest.
I am a rock when it comes to that. But, enjoying the sunshine. It's great to be finally doing a podcast where we've not lost this weekend.
Not playing helps, I suppose. we had a summer week. We had a summer week, didn't we? We both saw Springsteen. You saw him in Amsterdam last week. I saw him in Edinburgh through the week.
Yeah, I went.
How good is he? He's just 73. Just amazing, isn't he?
Fantastic. One for all those older guys to keep aspiring to. Fantastic. Yeah, it really was. It was excellent. I got to see the Johan Cruyff Arena as well, which was nice to see. Stewards there are just as big a bunch of dicks as the stewards in this country, and if it's any consolation. But nice arena, fantastic concert. Recommend it to anybody out there who has the slightest interest in music. Go and see them.
Was it £7 a pint?
Kidney to get a ticket, but
there was that. I mean, the price of the tickets, but it was the price of the alcohol as well. It was £7 a pint. I very near fainted when I got the bar bill when I ordered a few pints in, but it was, it's a one-off and all the rest of it. So yeah, it was well worth it. And also, Craig, how are you doing, Craig? How's your weekend been?
It's been good. I mean, I watched the big game yesterday. Obviously, it was a magnificent day for Man City at Wembley, beating Man United 2-1. So that was the big talking point of the weekend. I'm just really jealous about you talking about Springsteen. As you were saying there, it's possible once in a lifetime memory. I'm just wishing I actually forked out the cash to go and see him, because I was too tight to get a ticket for him a few months ago. So I wish I was doing it now. It seems like everybody was there except myself, and I'm raging about it. But hey ho, you never know. He's playing in Hyde Park a few weeks or something like that. I'll try my best. We'll see.
I think he's got one more tour left on him. Me and John were talking about this through the week. He thinks that could be it. It's the 50th anniversary of Born to Run in a couple of years, and assuming that none of the E Street Band die and that he doesn't die. I think
not a given at 73, to be fair. Yeah.
It's not, you know what I mean? I'd be fair to sneeze at 73. I'm 50 and I'm getting, scared to sneeze these days. But I do. I think he's got one more in him, Craig. So I think he might get.
Hopefully, some man anyway.
Did you see the game today? The Thistle game?
I seen the penalties. I seen the penalties. Listen, I've only got a few words to say on it, and it's the fact that my ex-missus is a Partick Thistle fan, so I'm on the Ross County.
Did you watch
most Thistle thing ever? Just you knew they were going to do that.
I know. I thought you were talking about my ex-missus. The most special thing ever. I'm like that. What? I don't know that on the fairways. But yes, it was a very strange game. They were 3-0 up with about 20 minutes to go. Ross County come back, the biggest comeback since Istanbul. Ironically, the Champions League finals in Istanbul next week, and well, no comment towards my ex-missus, but all I'm saying is I'm really hoping she's enjoying a non-air conditioned and non-toilet bus all the way back down to Bearsden.
Yeah, it's. I must admit, I was at an amateur cup final on Friday. Me and my mate were talking about it. We were having a pint before the game, and then I was like, you know what? Was Ross County the first game I ever went to was a Ross County game because we moved to Glasgow and stayed in the Highlands for a wee bit. My dad got work up there, and we were coming back from Inverness one day. I was only about 4 or 5, and we stopped off at Dingwall, and you could hear the roar of the crowd in the stadium. My dad hadn't been to a game for months, if not years, since we'd moved up, and he was like, "Oh, can we go?" And so, and they were in the Highland League at the time. You know, a corrugated iron over a grass slope. That was it. You know, it wasn't like what it is now. So because of that, I always have a wee look out for Ross County's results. But I was talking to my mate on Friday, and I was like, well, giving away Thistle went down on, you know, a couple of seasons back with the vote and all the rest. It feels like it would be justified for them to get promotion. But I must admit, when Simon Murray made it 3-1, my arse was off that couch.
This is an call. I mean, how many gifts have Partick Thistle had this season? I mean, Michael Beale gave them the biggest gift of all a couple of months ago, and they couldn't take advantage of that. They had a couple of gifts a day, and they still couldn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and their support is a bit whiny. You know what I mean? They kind of piss me off.
And weird.
Aye, they're a wee bit weird. I mean, normally I'm apart from our pals out of the road. Obviously, I'm normally quite all for the Glasgow teams doing quite well, but I must admit I quite enjoyed that today. But anyway, I digress. Let's get in and about the nuts and bolts. We're having a wee look at the season that's just passed. Although I suppose before we do,
we're all just talking about the Thistle Ross County again.
Well. There is also some sort of silver lining on the cloud that has been this season that's just developed over the last 24 hours. And we'll come on to talk about it. It's kind of on the agenda, but it's maybe worth talking about now. I mean, John, I sent you a message today for Twitter, the Celtic fan, you know, Ange has went from a treble-winning legend to a chest-pumping kangaroo shagger.
Yeah, and he's not even left yet, and that's how they're feeling.
24 hours, really?
Yeah, it's football's funny, and I said that to my son. My son went to the Thistle game on Thursday night. I live in North Glasgow or West Glasgow. My son went to the Thistle game on Thursday night with a couple of his pals who are Thistle fans, and we were watching the game this afternoon. And I said to him, I said, listen, only football can do this to you. No other sport in the world can do to you what football does to you. Where, you know, with 30 minutes to go, Thistle are 3 up, coasting and into the Premier League, and within 10 minutes it's 3-2 and they're bricking it, and it's clearly not going their way anymore. And I was saying that to him. I said, football's funny. Football could just turn. And this is another example. Celtic won the treble yesterday. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, it was like, who cares? You know what? People have known you were doing this for weeks. Nobody cares that you did it. The most unremarkable treble ever won. And now your manager has this, well, it seems pretty certain that he's gone. And suddenly you're a club in turmoil again. And you know, they just won the treble. And did a club in turmoil. And football just turns like that. And I was thinking, this time last year, you know, we got to the Europa League final, you know, lost by the narrowest of margins. We just won the Scottish Cup, and everything in the garden looked rosy. You know, this time last year, it was, you know, bring on the start of the new season. Look what Gio's done. Look where we're going. You know, potentially into the Champions League. You know, we'll definitely win the league this season. And football's like nothing else. There's no other pastime, nothing else that can give you these emotional changes. And what the Celtic support are going through just now is hysterical. You know,
so just a normal day in the life of a Celtic fan, then, John.
It's It is really quite comical that you can go from winning a treble to hating your manager in the space of 24 hours. And when you sent me that, I burst out laughing. That is just so on brand. They had convinced themselves that this Greek Australian had suddenly become, Jimmy Johnston or something. He's some guy who's never going to leave the club. Are you kidding? The only thing that surprises me is that Spurs is going to and not.
I know, Southampton. That's the most Spurs thing ever, I think, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's just like, they build that stadium. We're going to be a super club. We're going to be in the Super League, and then it's just. I mean, I'm not surprised that he's gone down south, right? But as you say, Spurs seems a strange one, but. Again, me and my mate were chatting about it on Friday, when the momentum was building up that he was going. And I was like, I'm just really looking forward to him going through the same thing that Brendan Rodgers went through, just up there to the biggest rat ever and like that. You know what I mean? And it started already. I don't know if you've noticed Kerrydale, the account on Twitter, Kerrydale.
Oh, yes.
He's obviously, he's trolling Twitter, going through everything, and he's retweeting every single one of them. Rodgers, Andrew's a prick, he's this, he's that, and you go on his timeline, it's just hundreds. You know what I mean? I'm like, my God, it's not even Monday yet, and it's starting. It's been quite enjoyable. But let's stop the laughter for now and concentrate on our own shite season. Craig, I'll come to you. I mean, I suppose you look at the points tally, 92 points. I don't have the stats to hand, but I think this could be the first time a team's reached that amount and not actually won the league. It seems a very high threshold, but it does cover a multitude of sins, especially in the first half of the season. And there was a feeling, in my opinion anyway, fairly early on in the season. I mean, the first drop points at Easter Road in August or something like that. Kind of what John was saying there, at the end of last season, there was all this positivity. We reached the Europa League final. We probably should have won it, in my opinion, but we're really unlucky. Lost out in a penalty shootout. Won the Scottish Cup. All this positivity. It didn't last long. I mean, very early on in the season, it felt, this could be tough.
Well, put it this way. The Europa League final was the 18th of May, Scottish Cup final 21st of May. We didn't sign our first player until mid-July. Celtic by that point had already signed Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers on permanent deals. For me, that was the difference. Laying out your intent at the start of the season as to what you're going to do. We didn't do that last year. Whether that's Gio's fault or Ross Wilson's or the board's fault, listen, it's another argument for another day. Well, probably is an argument for today because it's the end of season review, so we're going to need to do it. But look, we did go into the season with positivity. I think that Hibs game, to be fair, we weren't great that day, but we should never have lost that game. We know the refereeing decisions that went against us that day.
It was a draw. It was a two-each draw.
I know, but it did feel
like a defeat.
Equalising that weird goal in the last minute. And, after that, the next league games at Celtic Park, well, the less said about that, the better. For there onwards, it was just a calamity. I mean, that game in particular, there's, we call it defining moments or whatever you want to say. There was a couple for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. Both of them were at Celtic Park, in my opinion, and both of them were at Celtic Park in the first 30 or 40 minutes. I mean, I've never seen that before. Even in Rangers teams that have been really, really, really bad at Celtic Park in the banter years, never been 3-0 down after like half an hour. So that 4-0 game was, for there on in, it was like, we're not getting this back. I think for me, the one that, there's moments, and like, we all know it, right? There's moments that you think, we're going to do it this season, or we're not going to do it this year. For the 55 year, for me, and a lot of people, would have been the Motherwell game. Well, it was one each with 10 minutes to go. Itten scored and Roof scored. It was like, as soon as that, you're like, we're going to win the league. For me, the one that said this season, we're not going to do it, is the first weekend of VAR, actually, where we drew one each with Livingston at Ibrox. A couple of hours earlier, Celtic were at Tynecastle. They played Hearts. Hearts were I think 1 up, 2-1 up, 3-2 up. Celtic won 4-3. And then by the time our game starts at Ibrox, a minute in, we're a goal down by another duel, Newbley goal. And it's just moments like that where you go, it's just not happening for us this year. But the Easter Road one, look, it was a bad decision, so I was still going into that Celtic game with confidence. But as soon as that game happens, you're just like, aye, no chance this year.
Yeah, it's John. It's been a poor one. The 4-0 game was probably the turning point. You know what I mean? And you started to get the feeling at that point. There was a couple of clips came out of that game where there was one in particular when we conceded the second goal. You know, Kent turns his back on the ball, Lundstrom turns his back on the ball, and you see Van Bronckhorst shouting, pointing. You know, he's turned your back on the ball. That boy's free. The pass gets put through, and they go 2-0 up. It was at that point you started. There's a proper disconnect between Van Bronckhorst and the players. Something is just not right. Now, don't get me wrong, we can look at Gio's style, you know, the horseshoe, and a bit slow and a bit pedestrian, and you could question the fitness of the players. I would question the pre-season. But I don't think it excuses the basic lack of doing the basics, if you know what I mean. Just like, it was amateur stuff at times. And I think that 4-0 game was the point when everybody went, something wrong here.
It was a schizophrenia to the team, because obviously, I know we'll talk about it, obviously we qualified for the Champions League. We get two hard ties, you know, Dutch team, a Belgian team, you know, no shame in losing to either of those two. But that Celtic game, a part of it, I think it was because I think we went in with some expectation of a result. Having won the semi-final at Hampden in the manner that we did win it. You know, having gone behind and then came back and winning it, and the manner we won it, having drawn the game before that, you had this feeling that Van Bronckhorst was figuring them out. He was figuring out how they played. He was, you know, and we had gradually got better. I went into that game, you know, fairly confident that we would have a result. You never go in thinking you're going to. It's particularly at Parkhead. You never go in thinking like this is a game we're going to win easily. But I went in thinking, you know, right, this will be interesting. You know, they won't be looking forward to us coming in. They absolutely ran over the top of us, and frankly, we were lucky it was 4. And that, I think, came as a shock to us all. And I think that was the beginning of the end for Van Bronckhorst. I don't think he really ever recovered from that.
Well, it was almost identical to the 3-0 game earlier on. You know what I mean? It was like he hadn't learned anything.
Yeah, and the thing that was frustrating was because he had learned. We'd seen in the last 2 Rangers Celtic games of the previous season that he had learned, because we won and we drew, and you know, the one we won was an important one to win. It wasn't like the one we won like a couple of weeks ago there, that, you know, was more or less a dead rubber. That was a game we had to win, and we did win it. So that was the kind of start, I think, of the end for Gio. I'm still at a loss as to what happened. Still can't figure it out. I don't know. The points you made there about Kent and Lundstrom, both of whom had been very good under Van Bronckhorst 3 months before, are excellent points, because, you know, we're not football coaches, we're not football players, but we know how Celtic play. Mm-hmm. You know, we know that you know, that's part of their style, is to get that ball down and move again quickly, and you know that. So you stand in front of the ball, or you do something to break up play. It's not rocket science. Professional football players should be on top of that, and the fact that our players didn't do the basics of playing Celtic at Parkhead, and the fact that Van Bronckhorst was clearly frustrated that they weren't doing it, points to there being, you know, the issue that came ahead later on this season. Clearly they were not carrying out his instructions. They really weren't understanding them. They weren't being coached properly in what they were doing, or they were just ignoring them. But they certainly weren't carrying them out. And you know, it's criminal. We lost the league this year against Celtic. That was the games that lost us the league. I know we'll talk about other games we lost, other places we dropped points. You always drop points through the season. But the head-to-heads were the ones that we really let ourselves down in. And if we'd won in January, and if we'd got something at Parkhead in March, whenever that game was, who knows? It's all ifs and buts. Who knows, though? That's so disappointing.
Yeah, Craig. I mean, it is a sort of season of two halves, really. You know what I mean? The first half of the campaign before Christmas, you know, we draw against Hibs, Livy, St Mirren. You know, we get the defeat by Celtic, as I've just spoke about. The defeat at St Johnstone, and you know, by Christmas, we're 9 points behind. You know what I mean? When it comes to that winter break for the World Cup, we're 9 points behind. And it wasn't just the points tally. I mean, at that point, I was coming on here and defending Gio because he had points. He had points in the bank based on getting us to. And he never just got us to a Europa League final. He got us to a Europa League final with a bit of style. You know what I mean? Walter Smith got us there, fighting like fuck, essentially, just to get there. Yeah. We got to that final playing some cracking stuff.
We deserved it.
And absolutely deserved it. And I would actually argue they deserved to win the trophy outright. Yeah. But it wasn't to be, you know, when you think of Manchester and Seville, there's no doubt about what's the better campaign. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Seville is a better campaign. That whole run was so good. I mean, it was so tactically tuned in, and how he navigated them. And then just all of a sudden to just go completely the other way. As John says, you're still a bit bewildered by it.
That's it. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, look, I know Gio's form domestically since he came in wasn't great, more so since the start of 2022. But you know, that 4-0 game, like as you said, Colin, that second goal where like Lundstram and Kent are caught in no man's land, and you see Gio, he's doing all the hand gestures, he's doing this and doing that. Yeah. And that was when I get really angry because I thought, do you know what? This guy. He's masterminded us to a Europa League final, which he did. He masterminded us to that final. And those players are not carrying out his instructions in the biggest game possible in Scotland. And that's when I started to question the players' mentality. Probably should have done it a wee while before then, but that's when I really started to question it. And I don't understand it at all, you know, and it's like, John, you mentioned it earlier. He did suss him out. He sussed him out in that game at Hampden. The game at Parkhead that was 1-1 where Sakala equalised. We should have won that game. Yeah. You know, he had a couple of chances. I think Ryan Jack had a chance. We should have won that game. And then, for whatever reason, that first game at Parkhead, all hell breaks loose. And that's me being very, very nice towards him. And we're going to see a recurring theme from what I'm about to say, in terms of, you know, players not being able to carry out simple instructions, getting the basics wrong. Michael Beale uses the phrases later on in the season when we lose the two important games at Hampden. We lost the game in the boxes. We'll see, to be fair, but we're doing the same before that as well. I mean, we didn't look great under Gio. Let's be honest, we weren't playing amazing football. You know, it was a horseshoe, but we were still getting pretty much the same results. You know, but that 4-0 game, I don't understand it. And Colin, you did say a season of two halves. I mean, see, to be fair, we went into the Michael Beale era 9 points behind. We come out at 8 points behind. Mm-hmm. I know, all right, he's got a point, fine me on Celtic on that, and I did tweet about that a few weeks ago, which is mostly just to try and get a wee reaction out of Celtic fans, and it worked, by the way. But let's be real here. Michael Beale's came in. He's done well. I'm not here to, you know, try and throw anything at Michael Beale, but we've won nothing. Do you know what I mean? If we didn't sack, people say, right, okay, if we didn't sack Gio in November, it would have been a whole lot worse. We would have been 20 or 30 points behind. See, to be honest, whether we finished 20 or 30 points behind or 8 points behind, it doesn't make a matter of difference to me. We won absolutely nothing this season. Could Gio have done something better in the Cups against them? Well, probably not, but you know, we won't know that. At the end of the day, we'll know more about Michael Beale's Rangers going into next season. And my worry is, you know, the whole thing about the contracts with Kent Morelos, pretty much ready to, is that I'm scared that Michael Beale was brought in to try and get a tune out of the players that were there, as opposed to being brought in to have a complete rebuild. Because I think you could have had a complete rebuild under Gio last year. and I think he wasn't afforded the opportunity. I think the players that we brought in last summer, they were not Gio signings, they were Ross Wilson signings. I think that's pretty much agreed. So, look, there's a lot of positivity going into next season, and I am as well, but at the same time, it's like, we really need to win the league next season, because if we don't, the last year, 2 years is going to look like a hell of a lot of wasted money, and it's going to be a problem. And I'm not going to lie, I'm scared about that, because I think Michael Beale's the right man to succeed. I think he was probably brought in at the wrong time. I think he has done well to get a job out of the players that have been there, but let's face facts. You know, Gio was there for 1 trophy, Michael Beale was there for 2. So, you know, look at that. And I'm not saying it's Michael Beale's fault. It's not Michael Beale's fault that we lost the semi against Celtic. That was, not starting, never mind stopping. His selection in, the final at Hampden, that's questionable. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that we got rid of the manager thinking, that would, do this, that, and the next thing. You see at the end of the day, on paper, it changed nothing. We still walk out of this season empty-handed. So next season, I believe in Bill, I trust in Bill, but next season, we really, 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 really need to get it right, because if we don't, it will be a disaster, and that's not an exaggeration.
John, there is a common link, I think, between Gio and Bill, and it's in these Celtic games. The standard of the goals we conceded. Now, you can look at the 4-0 game, and at least 3 of them are laughable. One of the goals we conceded at Ibrox in that 2-each draw, the first one, that comes from us. That comes from Lundstrom miscontrolling the ball again. And then Morelos cuts it across. Tav doesn't tackle right. I think it was Goldson, I can't remember, doesn't tackle right. The game at Celtic Park, Ben Davies and Suter, 2 shocking goals to concede. The semi-final there, when everybody just stands off, and they let Celtic in, and Jota scores. So, yeah, we can look at the managers, we can look at Gio and say, okay, it didn't work, it wasn't good enough. But I've said this a lot on Twitter and a lot of times in the show this season. Some of the players in that dressing room need to take a hard fucking look at themselves, because I've rattled off about 7 goals here that are just unforgivable. You know what I mean? And 3 are in one game. So the three game at Celtic Park, that one at Ibrox, the 2 at Celtic Park, and the one in the semi-final. 7 goals against Celtic in something like 3 games that just shouldn't be conceded. You know what I mean? So that's it. But it comes down to, when you're blaming managers and stuff like that, and I get that, because they're ultimately responsible. But a manager can't control decision making on the park. You know what I mean? And some of those decisions lacked heart, lacked belief, and they never learned, because they done it continually. They done it when Gio was there, and they done it when Bill was there. It was a continual thread through the entire season. Just basically gift wrapping a goal and saying, there you go, Celtic, 1-0, 2-0, 1-0, 3-0, whatever.
Yeah. It points to mentality as much as anything else. Concentration. These guys, Goldson didn't become a bad centre-half in that game. Lundstrom is something of an enigma. This time last year, we were quite literally calling him the best in the world. And I think by Halloween, we would all have sold him. Players who hadn't been making mistakes suddenly start making mistakes. A couple of the goals you mentioned there are just, they're comedy goals. Absolutely. No, but a couple of them are just comedy goals, just like passing the ball to their players. Some of them were just poor defending. Some of them were, like you say, standing off, not closing down. But some of them were literally just passing the ball to them. And the departure of Van Bronckhorst, there was a lot of unrest amongst the support. We saw that doing the podcast. The comments that people leave, that people pass on to you later. You'd see it on the forum. You'd see it amongst the presenters and guests. There were some people, and I was a bit like you, that I hadn't quite didn't feel it was quite ready to give up in Van Bronckhorst. But clearly those behind the scenes at the club had seen, what they could see. And clearly there were issues there. And there were issues. There's no doubt there were issues. And whether Van Bronckhorst could have fixed them or not, I don't know. I always remember remember we had the Dutch guy on? I think, were you on that? Was it you and me?
He did say a couple of things that night that put a wee bit of fear in me. Yeah.
Aye. And I always remember that some of the things that he was saying and there was an element of history repeating itself. Van Bronckhorst had one very good season with Feyenoord, and he had players there that he was able to coach and win a league. And then when those players, in the case of Kout, left, retired, he was unable to replace them with like for like, and they had a terrible season the following season, and he was let go halfway through that season, despite being a Feyenoord legend. As a player, and a really popular player. And the thing is, I think Van Bronckhorst remains popular. It's funny. I don't think we necessarily turned against him as a person. I don't know. I remember Roy Mackay went home. There was talk that maybe some family issues and things. Yeah. Roy Mackay went home for a while. I don't know if there was things happening behind the scenes. I don't know if there was other issues, but it pointed the performances on the pitch, the lack of concentration. I've heard it said a number of times. I think we've spoken about it in the pod. The pre-season, was it right? There was times we looked tired. There was times we looked leggy, and that's not something you associate with Rangers. I mean, I've seen Rangers lose many games over the years, but I've not often felt, certainly domestically, that we weren't as fit as the teams we were playing against. And there's times it looked like that this season, and I don't know why that would be. There's no reason why that would be. No good reason anyway. I think we were unlucky with injuries. I think we were. Yeah. I don't think our recruitment in the summer was particularly good, but I do think we were unlucky. Cholak, had a great start to the season and then picked up an injury. He was scoring goals. He was scoring a lot of goals, and then he picked up an injury, and then we lost him. We lost Goldson, who we'd never lost in the entire time he's been with us. We lost him. We obviously, Roof barely kicked the ball all season.
Tom Lawrence as well. We never got to see what he was capable.
Lawrence was the one I was going to say. Lawrence looked, if we can remember that first kind of July, August, Lawrence looked like, this could be the guy. Because we lost Bassey and we lost Aribo. Two very important players to us the year before. We didn't replace Bassey. Bassey wasn't replaced. But Lawrence looked like he might replace Aribo. Different type of player, but an attacking, creative player, a guy who provide assists, who draw defenders, and we all know how that ended. And so we were unlucky. You can't put it all down to luck, but we didn't. The luck was didn't go our way. It's not in the first half of the season, and you need luck. There's the famous quote from Napoleon when asked what he looks for in these generals, and he said, "Luck. I want a lucky general." And there's a lot of truth in that.
Jesus Christ, that's a bit high ground. Napoleon quotes, jeez,
Napoleon. Nobody's watching, so it doesn't make any odds when you come out with this stuff. Nobody's going to check. and you need a bit of that. We're talking about continental battlefields here. You need a bit of that. Listen, I should point out,
it wasn't much of a continental battlefield this season.
It ended up, there was a few battlefields. Unfortunately, we ended up like Napoleon and all of them. The luck didn't go our way. And I don't think you can point to one thing. And it was interesting hearing what Craig said about his concerns for next season. I go through every summer and the hope returns. and I go in with a positive mindset and I'm looking forward to it. And it's... You see something in pre-season and the friends say, this could be a good season for us. And the truth is, you just don't know until it starts. And let's see what next season brings. But looking at last season, I think it was lots of little things. I think lots of little things went wrong. And part of it was losing the games that we needed to get a result in, the Celtic games. And those were big games. And I think, not just from the perspective of 3 points, but I think from a psychological perspective, we kept handing 100%. Celtic an advantage. We let Celtic think they were unbeatable because we seemed to stop believing that we could beat them. And the truth is, they weren't unbeatable, and we showed that, a few weeks ago. But our psychology was wrong. And that's not really forgivable. That doesn't. The buck does stop with the manager there.
Craig, there was a really big positive early on in the season when we qualified for the Champions League.
The only positive.
Well, even that turned shit. You know what I mean? When we got
at least we get the money.
Yeah,
at least we skinned the fans for 60 quid a ticket, and we got the money as well.
That's the point I was about to make. So we qualified for the Champions League. Like my son's just turned 18, so he was too young the last time Rangers were in the Champions League. So he was really excited to go and see a Champions League game. We bought the package for the tickets. And then the prices come out, and you're like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean?
Yeah, need to remortgage the house.
And then they turn in 3 absolutely horrid home performances. The Liverpool one, especially. We come out of the group with no points. I think it's the worst Champions League performance by any team. You know what I mean? So, even that, when we qualified that night, when we beat PSV, even that, I should have twigged it wasn't going to be a good thing, because at the start of the game, I'd rewound it. You can rewind your Sky Plus. I'd rewound it by like 3 or 4 minutes to watch an interview and had forgot to put it back to real time. So without knowing, I was watching the game like 3 minutes behind. And my son was at training. He was training for his team that night. And he came bouncing. It's not an each on my telly. And he comes bouncing around going, yes, 1-0. And I'm like, no, it's no. And he was like, I was literally listening to it in the car. And I was like, oh. Sure enough, 30 seconds later. And so that took there was no real joy about scoring. It was like, okay, we're winning. You know what I mean? It just sort of killed the moment, and I should have known then. This is just going to be a shit season, you know what I mean? It's just going to be shit.
So what you're saying, Colin, is you never actually had that high moment of this season?
No, the Champions League campaign, other than the USG game, was an absolute champions.
I was going to say, maybe you somehow managed to rewind your season ticket by about 4 or 5 minutes at that one as well. But no, I was at Eindhoven for that one. It was a great night. It was very good. It was a highlight of the season. I remember I had my hotel room booked in Eindhoven, and where it was kind of like between the strip and Eindhoven, but it was just full of PSV fans for like midday. Like the place was going absolutely nuts with PSV fans, and like going to meet Rangers fans at the normal square. So I was walking through like the strip with PSV fans and all that, and no one said anything. They're all quite polite, in fairness to them, 1 or 2 down there like that. Oh, come on, Celtic and all that. Right? I'm like that. Okay, come on, Ajax. And then one of them handed me a leaflet, and I took it off them. They said, you coming back here later tonight? And I'm like that. Yes, I'll be back here later tonight. Not a problem at all. And I took the leaflet, went away, blah, 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 and translated it. And it was like a PSV badge, a Champions League logo, and it said, be back here in basically the Eindhoven version of Sucky Hall Street for a PSV Champions League party. Now, obviously, went to the game in the Philips Stadion, very good stadium. It was a decent game. Cholak scored. The game finishes, brilliant. We go down, and I went back to the strip. Well, all the PSV fans told me to meet them for the Champions League party, but there was nobody there. I was the only person that was there. But in fairness, with the 6 games that were coming in the Champions League, I was still probably the only person that was going to be there. But I won't forget that night in Eindhoven. For me, it was really emotional. Even the qualifier against PSV, and I know we'll say it wasn't a proper Champions League game. Look, see, at the end of the day, when the music's playing, you've got the branding around the stadium. It's a Champions League game. That game against PSV, that was really, really emotional for me, because to me that signified the end of the journey, properly. But the European campaign in general was just an absolute farce. I mean, the Ajax game coming 3 days after the humiliation at Celtic Park, the Napoli game at Ibrox, where we done quite well. I think that was just one of those games. Sands gets sent off. It took Napoli 2 penalties to get one over on us that day. So, the runaway Serie A champions, we can put up with that, fair enough. Then the Liverpool game came, and after about half an hour, where I go up against them. We're beating them 1-0.
And playing well.
We were playing well, and
I don't think Rangers played particularly bad that night. It was just the last 15 minutes. It just half time. Half time was one each. Yeah. Aye, Colin. So half time was one each, and I remember going into half time, and I was raging because I said, Firmino, I think it was, that scored the equaliser for the corner, and I just went, we've showed them too much respect. I said, we scored the goal, we got our noses in front, we were brilliant, and I just went, we've showed them too much respect to allow them to get back in the game. But at the same time, the vibes around Ibrox were really positive. It's like, we're going to get something, we're going to win this game. Aye, 6 goals later. Yeah.
Look what happens, but that's football, as we were talking about for so earlier.
John, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't enjoy the Champions League campaign, but I mean, how did you feel? I mean, obviously getting back was a moment, as Craig's pointed out there. You know, it does kind of represent the end of a journey. Although I would argue getting to a European final was probably a bigger achievement, but. You know, the Champions League is the biggest tournament. To get back in that does sort of represent a step, you know, maybe the final step. Although given the financial results on the back of that, although I know some of that money will be in next year's accounts, you know, it feels like we need to get back in there a couple of times to get the sort of financial foundation that we need. I mean, how was your Champions League group stage journey? I mean, for me, obviously disappointing. One of the biggest disappointing things for me was the pricing. You know, I just felt like I was getting the piss ripped at me, and that's been a reoccurring theme for a while now with the club. But that out of the equation, how was your Champions League campaign?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't one to remember. The Ajax away game was very frustrating because we played so poorly. You know, having beaten PSV in Eindhoven, you know, Ajax aren't, you know, you look at them and think, well, they must be on a similar par to PSV. They play in the same league. Yes, Ajax had won the league. But when you actually look at how the league went this season, you know, that for me, we went into that game for some reason with a very negative attitude. We didn't turn up. We played very poorly, and we allowed Ajax to just run all over the top of us. And I don't understand why we did that. Having seen us put Dortmund to the sword, and there's no way you're telling me Dortmund are a poorer team than Ajax. Yeah. Having seen us, you know, our run last season with basically the same side, with the exception of Bassi and Aribo, how and why we turned up with the mindset we did at Ajax, I just don't understand. And I will
is this again. Is it maybe hearing that? Is it maybe hearing that Champions League theme tune, thinking, oh, it's a Champions League now, it's not the Europa League, even though it's a team.
That's a fair point, Colin. I never actually thought about that myself. Because, like, you never know. You know, we're all talking about mentality here. As soon as that Champions League anthem's played, you know, and at the end of the day, I remember when we played PSV. I think PSV actually went out and beat Ajax that weekend. So I was going into that game thinking, you know, well, Ajax, PSV, they're at least on a similar level. And they went out and absolutely gubbed us. So. Yeah. Mentality-wise, it might be the Champions League anthem. Who knows? But that's a fair point.
Yeah. I mean, it's. No, I mean, what you've both said there, you could well be right, because something was not right with that team that night. That was such a different performance from what we had been used to in Europe over the 2 seasons before, where we went toe to toe with teams in Europe. And you know, we laid the glove on them. You know, in some cases we came away with historic victories. But even in the games that we didn't win, you know, we came away knowing, right, at Ibrox, you know, this is, you know, we're going into the game at Ibrox thinking we've got a chance. And I think that came as a surprise. And as you mentioned, it came very, very close to the Celtic defeat and this sudden realisation that something's happened to this team.
Yeah.
That the mentality's not right. The tactics aren't right. Something has happened to this team, and suddenly we're shipping goals and unable to score them. And that was massively worrying and hugely disappointing. The Liverpool game in Liverpool, there was an element of the Walter Smiths in Europe about it. You know, we were kind of there to see if we could if we could get a 0, I think was the term used about Van Bronckhorst. We were there to see if we could get a 0-0 draw. We didn't manage. It was a terrible game of football. We didn't manage. We deserved to lose that game, and yet oddly, we had a couple of chances in the last kind of 15 minutes. I don't know if you remember that game. A couple of chances, having done nothing the entire game. The last 15 minutes, we suddenly came out and had a go, and we actually had a couple of chances. And again, you felt, what if we just played our game, played our style there. We were unlucky in Napoli in that, we got the most informed team in Europe. In our group. Liverpool are a mega team. It's difficult to quantify the gap between our two clubs just now. But, Liverpool are a mega team. Liverpool's reserves, as you saw that, Liverpool went to the bench and brought on, Mo Salah. Liverpool had a bench that would be the envy of most clubs' first choices. And at Ibrox, having had that, as you say, that great first half, and again, you thought, right, this is the Rangers now. This is Rangers turned up. This is the Rangers from Europe we know. There was a gutlessness to the way we collapsed. And it was interesting, you said you've never seen a team do that before. I've seen lots of teams do that. I've never seen a Rangers team do that before.
Yeah.
That there was a gutlessness to that. And that, I think, was the other moment where folk thought, something's wrong with this club. See if it had been a team of boys we had out. See if it had been we're having to play youngsters at a place. But it wasn't. It wasn't our first choice. We did have guys missing, but it was so disappointing the manner of that defeat at Ibrox. To have that defeat hanging over us now at Ibrox it's not great. And ironically, against Napoli away, again, I thought actually we played okay away. And I thought, we did okay. Didn't deserve to win. Better team won. They had some wonderful players. I thought we did okay. But by the end of it, it was like, oh God, let me out of here. Stop hitting me. He's dead already. It was that type of thing. And having had 3 really good seasons in Europe, culminating in a European final, it was such a disappointment that we didn't put on more of a show. We didn't put on more of, I think we can all accept losing to Liverpool if you know that you've left everything out there.
Yeah.
The team has left everything out there, and we didn't. We didn't.
They were brittle at the time.
That's disappointing.
That was a brittle team. I mean, when you think the season that Liverpool have had, there's been so many games since I've watched that Liverpool team and went, I can't believe this team put 7 past us. Because, for the majority of the season, I know they just missed out in the Champions League. They had a decent wee run towards the end. But for long periods, I was watching that Liverpool team like, this is, of all of Klopp's team, this is the worst version that they've ever had. I would have taken it 2 or 3 years ago when they were just untouchable. But this is the worst version of this team that they've ever had. And it was just, I really do think, I can't quite remember the timing of the goals. But I'm pretty sure on like 75 minutes it was 2-1. And it was just... It
was ridiculous. It was just a ridiculous...
It was like 4 goals and it was...
It just felt like every time they were running out of the park they were going to score. So yeah, I agree. It was a really, really disappointing campaign in that respect, John. In terms of... obviously Beale arrives, he brings in Cantwell, brings in Raskin. I think we can all agree that we've seen an improvement. I think Beale's ambition, once he knew, I think that goal that Celtic got on January with 2 minutes to go, that was probably the final opportunity we had to narrow the points, and if you get it down to 6 points at that point, you just never know, you don't know how they're going to react and all the rest of it. I think when that goal went in and it was a 2-each draw, I kind of felt at that point, I don't think we were going to claw this back.
It felt like a defeat.
Yeah. But I don't think anyone can argue that we've not seen an improvement in performances. I think obviously the performance levels of Cantwell in particular, we look a more confident team. There's a bit of rhythm about us. And we saw that at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago, when we beat Celtic 3-0. So we've definitely seen, improvements. Cup campaigns, again, really, really disappointing. But Craig, I want to sort of talk about off the park now, because there has been a lot of movement there, a lot of movement. So, you think about it, Douglas Park's away, Ross Wilson has gone, Stuart Robertson's left the club, Craig Mulholland at the academy's away, Andrew Dixon, the financial chief exec or whatever he was, he's gone, and the guys that sit behind me at Ibrox, they've known Andrew Dixon for years, and according to them, he came into his work one day and was told, pack your desk and go. It was as brutal as that. There was no warning, no nothing. It was just clear desk and go. So it feels like, not only on the park, it feels like we're about to enter a new era on the park. Obviously, a lot of new signings coming in, but off the park, in the boardroom, and the sort of management structure, feels like a lot of change going on there.
Absolutely. Well, I never actually realised that happened to Andrew Dixon, like you mentioned it there, Colin. And to put it bluntly, John Bennett, he's no messing about.
No,
he's not messing about, is he? And do you know what? I think it's been long overdue at Rangers. We just need people to come in. We need to have that Rangers mentality. I think it was the Battle Fever podcast that tweeted it yesterday. A change of mentality is what is needed at this club. And that is absolutely 100% the truth. Now, it's a weird way that I kind of describe it, because we talk about the recovery phase, the recovery phase for like 2015 to probably now, to be fair. The recovery phase, get Rangers back into the SPL, get them back up to the Scottish top of Scottish football, get them back doing well in Europe, blah, 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 blah. That's all well and good. Now is not the time for recovery. We've already recovered. We got back to the top of Scottish football very briefly, but we did get back to the back for a wee bit, and it was good. We've had our runs in Europe. For me, we've went from a stage of recovery to a stage of normality, where now it needs to be Rangers, proper Rangers, as in we are going to win the league every single season. And if we don't win the league in that particular season, there's going to be repercussions for it. Now, I look back to the last period where Rangers, went a few years without winning the league before, the fan hit the what. We changed 2 managers in 3 years. Celtic won 3 in a row from 2006? Well, 2006, 7 and 8. We changed 2 managers in 3 years at that time. Now, I know it was a different era, different owner, blah, blah, but the point remains that we changed it until we got it right. We changed it until we got Walter Smith back in, who made it right, and then he went and won 3 leagues in a row. We're now at a point where we cannot keep excusing what happened to us 11 years ago as, a point of, excusal. Because for me, that died a couple of seasons ago. I said in a tweet yesterday, I went, the years we got up from 2016 to 2018, I could almost excuse it because there was a player disparity between Rangers and Celtic, and there was a financial disparity. So 2 trebles in, it's not nice to say, but you can kind of excuse it. But let's not forget, 2 years ago, pretty much, we won the league undefeated against a team that had won 9 league titles in a row. That is not a bad Rangers team. The fact that we have let a team that went a full league season unbeaten go and lose 5 of the next 6 domestic trophies is unacceptable. We cannot have that continue any longer. And the time for excuses for me is absolutely over. Rangers and Celtic, even financially now, yeah, Celtic do have slightly better finances than Rangers. We've got a lot more money in the bank. But in terms of, player wages, etc., it's pretty much neck and neck. I actually believe that last season, 21-22, Rangers had a bigger wage bill than Celtic. So we can't keep using what happened 11 years ago as an excuse. The time for talking's over. The fact that we allowed Celtic to win 5 trophies out of 6 after winning the league unbeaten is just unforgivable. That is not acceptable in any stretch of life. So going forward next season, the board have got to get it right. I think we've got the right people in charge. I really, really like John Bennett. I think he's a Rangers man. He's got that good mix into it. It's like, you want a businessman and you want a Rangers man. If you can combine the both, it's bloody brilliant. And you've got James Bisgrove as well, who, let's face it, I've said it about him before, the guy knows what he's talking about. He's had, in terms of modern football, he's had so many senior roles at UEFA. He probably put Michel Platini to shame. The guy knows what he's
talking about. It would take a lot to shame Michel Platini, I think.
Well, not exactly, but the point I'm trying to make is obviously, like, the guy knows what he's talking about. The guy knows what he's doing in terms of modern football. I said that, Bisgrove was at UEFA for like 2 years and then he get promoted, and then he was at them for like another 3 or 4 years. You don't get promoted at UEFA unless you're good at your job, right? Let's face it. So he knows what he's doing. He's got the right contacts. And to be fair to him, he stuck to his word. He said when he came in, and I think it was 2019, I'm going to, narrow the gap in revenue between Rangers and Celtic. I think it was about £30 million off the top of my head that Celtic were ahead of Rangers in commercial revenue in 2019. There is no gap anymore in terms of commercial revenue. Bisgrove's the one that's done that. I firmly believe in him. I fully believe in Bennett. And this is what I've got to do going forward. You know what? We've got the team there. We've got the team there in terms of the boardroom. And we've just got to go make it show. But I need to stress, we cannot keep making excuses for what happened 11 years ago. For me, that is gone now. And, I'm quite angry. I'm quite emotional and stuff like that in the same respect as well, because I can't help it. Like, we're all Rangers fans here. We want the best for the club. We want us to do well. And to watch and sit by and watch them win treble after treble, it's sickening. And do you know what? If you're a Rangers fan out there and you were or you weren't watching that game yesterday, whether you heard the news for a person on your phone, whether you see that happening live on the telly, that I really wanted that to make you sick, because it made me feel sick yesterday when I seen that. And that is the mentality that we need to have going forward. We cannot allow them any more space. This is it now. This is, for me, a line in the sand moment. I think we've got the boardroom and team, and now we just need to go and do it.
John, the movement in the boardroom, how do you feel about that? I mean, a lot of change. And, I recall various comments for you throughout the season, given your own sort of business dealings, that you thought this was a lot for any business to take on in terms of change of management structure and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's fundamental change. It's change. They've changed almost every senior aspect at the club, which is almost unheard of when there hasn't been there's not been a takeover. There's not been a change of ownership at the club. So to see that level of change in such a short space of time, it's a hell of a gamble. I'll say that. And, I understand what the sentiments behind what Craig is saying. I have absolutely no idea if we have the right people in place. I really don't. The people who were there before, in terms of the Park family, they are a very successful, very astute business people and big blue noses. I've no idea if John Bennett knows more or knows less than they do, but he has certainly shown, and you have to assume that these decisions are decisions that he has been behind. But he has certainly shown in a very short space of time a ruthlessness and a desire to make change that we've probably not seen at the club since the late 80s. It's probably been that length of time. There was obviously the big change when the Three Bears and King managed to take back the club. There was that big change, and obviously the time before that when things all went to the wall. But in terms of this type of change, in terms of somebody making changes internally, we haven't seen change since then. And the change then went very well. Those changes modernised the club and in many ways changed Scottish football forever. Whether these changes will do that will depend on who they bring in. The people have to be replaced. We will need new people to come in, but we've changed manager, we've changed coaching staff, we've changed the boardroom, we've changed the senior executives at the club. As I said, it's a lot of change, and not all change works first time round. So we'll just have to see. I'm probably more nervous about that level of change than Craig is. I probably find that level of change slightly alarming. But let's see where it goes. Football's a funny business. Football's a very funny business. Unlike every other business, they know that we'll be here this time next year and the time after that. We might not be happy, or we might be deliriously happy, but we'll be here. They're not going to lose us as customers, if you like, but they will have to deliver and on the pitch. And that's what it matters. I think a couple of things that Craig said. Craig said we've closed the gap in terms of turnover with Celtic. Yes, we have. But we haven't closed the gap in terms of income, in terms of actual profit and what we're doing. That there still has a bit to go. And we'll see what this season brings after the Champions League money and a couple of big sales last summer. And it'll be interesting to see what our next books look like. But we still haven't quite got that to the point where we are toe to toe with them. So let's see what happens. There's some big decisions to be made. I get the impression, and I say this in every pod wherever we're talking about. I have no inside information. I'm just somebody passing on my opinion, and my opinion is as uninformed as most people, but. From the outside looking in, I have to assume that the people in charge of the club just now have a plan. It doesn't feel like scattergun. It doesn't feel like they've just gone on a firing spree. It feels like there is a plan in place, and I'll be interested to see how that plan is fulfilled and what happens. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is in terms of reshuffles and all the rest of it. We've seen exits as well, Alan McGregor, Scott Arfield, Ryan Kent, Morelos, Philip Palander have all left. I think we can certainly say with respect to McGregor and Arfield, there's a feeling that their careers at Ibrox were a success. I mean, McGregor's a club legend, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Scott Arfield, very popular, especially with me. Love the guy. Palander, good player as well. I just think really unlucky with injuries. Morelos, probably going to go down as a club legend, but how his career sort of petered out at the end there, frustrating. And Kent again was slightly frustrating. But looking forward to next season, we've already seen that Kieran Dowell's in, Dujon Sterling's in, Raskin and Cantwell have obviously been really, really good buys from Beale so far. We were talking earlier on, Kemar Roofs to come back, Tom Lawrence is to come back. So it definitely feels like. It feels like from the boardroom to the pitch, it's just like a new era. So, with that in mind, and looking forward to next season, are you both confident? Craig, will start with you. Are you confident for next season?
Oh, 100%. I'm always confident heading into any season. Look, we can't get over the fact that what we're seeing on the other side of the city right now is uncertainty. And we know what uncertainty breeds. We've seen that with ourselves, when Gerrard left. Everything seemed rosy in the garden as soon as Gerrard left. We know what happened after that. So that gives me positivity. But to be fair as well to the board and everyone in charge of Ibrox now, I do think there's a plan. I know John mentioned it, but I really do think there's a plan. I've got the confidence in these people. I mean, the fact that Rangers have signed 2 players by the end of May and it wasn't even June, I mean, that gives me the confidence in itself that it's going to be a good season, because when was the last time we've seen that? I mean, I think to the last time we had a successful Rangers season, obviously the one we won the league, we got the big signings at to be very early. We get Roof done, we get Hadji done early, Itten as well. Remember Roof and Itten were signed in the same day. Well, like that, we're seeing 2 strikers for like £6 million in the space of like 4 hours. Like, what's happening here? But we need to get the core of the squad back. We do need another goalkeeper. It does look as if it's going to be Jack Butland. I've got my reservations about him, but I think Robbie McCrory should be the number one going into the next season. But to be fair, if Jack Butland's here challenging him and they're both going at it, fine. It's brilliant. It's more competition. That's what you need at Rangers. You need competition. So if you've got both of them going for it, I'm very happy. So Cifuentes is supposed to be unveiled in the next few weeks. That's for me as well. I've not got a problem. I actually think in the midfield we're okay. I think we're probably talking about adding bodies more than quality, if that kind of makes sense to the viewers at home. What we need is a striker. I mean, we need a striker, a proper striker, because unfortunately Roof isn't going to be fit. It's quality, obviously, on his day. We don't know what's happening with Cholak. We need a striker that's, a big signing. That's what we need going into the next season. That's probably where we did lose the league. We need, I think, one big centre-back, and I don't mean in terms of size, but in terms of, finances. We need one big centre-back. We probably need 1 or 2 backups as well. Because I look at it, I'm saying we've got Goldson, Suter. Can't trust Suter with his injuries. That's really it. I mean, you've got Leon King there, obviously. I think another one, obviously we need to sign one anyway, and then probably a 5th one just for the squad depth. So, look, we've got a lot of work to do. Let's not beat around the bush here. We're not the best team in Scotland at the moment. We can't get away from that. But if the news goes through, obviously, which it will go through in the next few days of what's happening in the other side of the city, we need to take that and put it to our advantage. I've heard people saying like, I want him to stay because I want Bill to knock him off his perch. Listen, we're Rangers fans. We're not here to knock one person off their perch. We're here to knock Glasgow Celtic off their perch. That's what we're here to do. We're not here because of one person. We're here to knock them all off their perch. That's what we need to do going into the next season. So if the departure of their manager puts him under, a wee bit of uncertainty, like we had when Gerrard left, good. That's what I want. I want uncertainty at Celtic. Do you know what I mean? It's golden currency for me. Let's not get into the whole, I wish we could have done this, we could have done that. I don't care. At the end of the day, we want Celtic to be bad, we want Rangers to be good. That's all that matters at the end of the day, and I'm very confident going into the next season. Listen, regardless of what happens over there, I'm very, very confident in our current manager and in his recruitment strategies that we've got the squad to go forward next season, because if you look at his recruitment, he's signed 2 players, he's got a 100% success record. It's no bad, is it?
Not bad at all. John, yourself, how are you feeling for next season?
Aye. I'm more optimistic than I was 3 months ago. Cantwell has turned into a fantastic signing, and he's very quickly becoming a favourite, not only for his creative ability, but for the fact that he's clearly got a bit of devilment about him as well, and I think that's something that this Rangers team's been missing. Somebody who opposition fans hate. So we need someone like that. The Dowell lad from Norwich is a gamble. He's not got a great injury record, but by all accounts, on his day, he could be a fantastic signing. But there's issues around injuries with him, and so it'll be interesting to see how he pans out. The boy from Chelsea is obviously a hope that there's potential. You're buying potential. You're buying a guy who was a fantastic youth player, a highly rated youth player, and who his career hasn't quite gone on. And Chelsea's not a great club for youngsters to come through at. It's very rare that folk come through it. My dog's having a drink just now, in case you're wondering what that is in the background. Dog's just come in from a walk and is really thirsty. And that's been so from that perspective, obviously we've got a better feeling going into the season. But I think I got to see what the summer brings. As Craig rightly said, up front, we need a centre forward. We probably need two, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. And I'm certainly a happier man than I was a couple of months ago. And again, as Craig says, I think what's going on across the city is only good news for us. Any type of disruption is something that gives us a slight advantage. But ultimately, it'll be up to our own team and our own recruitment, and it'll be interesting to see what's coming in the coming weeks.
Looking at the time, guys, we'll need to wrap things up fairly soon. We've kind of ran over a wee bit. So one thing to mention is the Player of the Year, the Gersnet Player of the Year. We have two votes. The vote on the forum gave it to Malik Tillman, which I can't. I mean, Tillman was a great player. I just felt in the big games he just didn't do enough. Obviously, we'll see whether the club, bring him back on a permanent deal. I would take him on a permanent deal. I'm just not quite sure about the money that's been talked about him. I've just got reservations because he just in the bigger games just didn't turn up so much. The contributors vote, people on the podcast gave it to Tav, which I'd agree with. That's who I voted for. I don't think he had a vintage season, but more goals, more assists, just in terms of the numbers. He turned up as a captain should. And so I think we'll call time there. So, guys, a big thanks for joining us. A big thanks to John and Craig for joining us. And a big thanks to everyone that's watched this season. It's the last show of the season. And obviously, as I said earlier on, it's my last show ever. So, big thanks for watching all these years and joining in. It's quite sad to leave, but it feels like the right time. So, yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the 5 years. Thanks for following us and 6,000 subscribers or whatever it is on YouTube now. It's it's something I'm very proud of. I'm glad to have been part of it. I'm glad that Frankie gave me the opportunity. 2018, I think that started, and it started at a time in my life where things weren't going so well and I needed something, and the pod provided that. So big thanks to Frankie for that and for giving me the opportunity. I always wanted to do it. I'd been watching podcasts for a while and I thought, I think I can do this. And he gave me the opportunity to do it, and I quite enjoyed it. And so I'm thankful for that. And thankful to everyone, all the contributors, obviously Ek with our various videos and various pubs down the year have been a bit of a laugh. John, Craig, all the guys at the start when we recorded it, and Graham that used to do the sound and all the rest of it. And it's been enjoyable starting something from nothing and getting it to where it is now. And so for the final time, we were live tonight. We were live on the Sunday night. The pod will be available to download or stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Catspot, Stitcher, and Spotify. Big thanks to John and Craig. We'll be back next season. Obviously, I won't, but the pod will be back next season, so tune in. In the meantime, get yourself onto the website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. I'm going to leave with a Springsteen inspired exit and sort of tribute to me and John going to the gig this week. So, for the last time, it has been a pleasure to present the heart-stopping, pants-dropping, hard-rocking, earth-shocking, booty-shaking, love-making, Viagra-taking, history-making, legendary Gersnet podcast. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Bye for now.
Colin, we can't let you go. We can't just let you go on that. I know, I feel bad because I feel I should have cut in before you got to say your bit, but Frankie and the guys asked me to say a few words for you, being your last night. 5 years of poor internet connections and hatred of the SFA, the SPFL, UEFA, FIFA, the BBC. And I think what we've figured out from all of that is that you just have an aversion to organisations that have initials. They seem to be the people who get your ire. Your first broadcast was on the 1st of April, 2018. I don't know if that date is something that people should read too much into or not. I had a look at the agenda for that particular podcast, and it included moans about team selection and poor refereeing decisions. And let's be honest, you've just basically kept that agenda for every programme since then. It's been the same agenda. That's good. There was a thing on it as well at the time, which I'd completely forgotten about, which was Sevco of the Week. It was a thing we had at the start as well, which made me smile. There have been some memorable moments in those 5 years. I think one of the highlights was, for most of us, was you and Ross having an argument over who was more famous, Stephen Gerrard or George Harrison. That's something that clearly gripped all of us at the time. But it happened, and believe me, Ross remembers it and is still embittered about it. But, let's not dwell on that.
I'm assuming I was talking about George Harrison.
You would definitely.
Anyway.
So, look, a couple of things to say here. Indulging ourselves for 2 seconds. Look, we're not professionals. As anyone who's watched our podcasts over the years know, we're not professionals, right? We're a completely disparate group of people. And our only connection with each other is a love of Rangers. And that's the only thing we all have in common with each other. And I think you, more than any of us, have exemplified that over the last 5 years. Okay, the Sunday night shows, the Friday night previews, the post games, the pre games, the run last year to the Europa League final. Part of that for us was the amount of time and effort that you put in. And it was UNX sometimes, and sometimes it was doing the other preview. Sometimes we had 2 preview shows a week as well as a Sunday night one. And I think it's important that people understand that we do this for fun. We just do this because we are very sad and we have no social life. But we do have families and we do have people who put demands on our times. So you more than anyone have to take an awful lot of credit for what's happened with this podcast over the years. Another thing that I think is worth pointing out about you is you've never been scared to criticise the club. You've never been scared to criticise the fans if you felt it was right. One of the great things about Gersnet is that Frankie does allow us to speak our mind. And over the years, you've done that. Sometimes when it's not necessarily a particularly popular thing to do, but you've done it if you felt it. You're a curmudgeon. There's no 2 ways about that. You're constant shouting in the modern world. And in particular, my Gers has been of something I've enjoyed over the last 18 months or so. But you continue to be someone who represents the best of Rangers supporters. You're thoughtful, you're articulate, you're engaged in what's going on, you're open to new ideas, but most importantly, you're passionate about it. And that comes through in everything you've done over these years. People don't, I think, accept, and probably don't remember, that literally none of us knew what we were doing when this started off. Literally none of us had a clue what we were doing. We were feeling our way through it.
Some would argue that's still the case, John.
Well, it's some would argue, and in times they would be correct, and I have no problem admitting that. But the point is, at a time when our support was then, and still is today, demonised by people who should know better, you've demonstrated the best of that over these times. And we thank you for that. And I want to leave you with a quote, okay? The truth is that there is no journey. We are arriving and we are departing all at the same time. I don't know if you know who said that.
George Harrison.
I thought it was appropriate. No, David Bowie said that.
David Bowie?
David Bowie said that. And it's right, because, there's been a lot of change in this podcast over the years, but none of the people who've left will be harder to replace than yourself. And I think on behalf of everyone at Gersnet, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us all over the last 5 years. Good luck, mate.
Cheers, John. Thank you. Do you want to wrap up the show then?
That's it. The show's done. No one's listening anymore anyway. They've all gone.
Oh, I know. Bye for now.